very much, Fran. I'm here to introduce the wrong page. Okay. Fran, thank you. Here's your gift for taking it. I will come and deliver it to your table, but everyone can imagine that I just handed that to her. So next up, I'd like to welcome Stephen Bartolo. Stephen is the Senior Vice President of the Shepherds of Good Hope, I believe in Ottawa, and is joining us today to speak on understanding our spectrum of care, innovation, harm reduction, and building a community for all. Thank you.
This is me struggling with the button. Oh, okay. Got it? Great. Just want to get this up a little bit, actually, without breaking it. Great. I'm the same as everybody else. I'm not a huge fan of microphones. Normally, I would want to just take this off and walk around, but I'll make do. I also wanted to acknowledge being on these traditional lands. I feel so privileged being here. I can feel the energy in the room. I also, before we start, I want to thank Dr. Emma Eaton for inviting me up here. I know a little secret, Emma, actually, before she was Dr. Emma Eaton, was a social worker in Ottawa, or a frontline staff in my agency many years ago. And we talked about coming up here, but probably like all of you, it's just been so busy with the toxic drug supply, the lack of affordable housing, the pandemic. It's been 24/7. And I was saying to Emma that I was in Victoria for 10 days to do a graduate residency, which actually just finished up 48 hours ago. So it was my pleasure to just hop on one plane and come here. So it's a big pleasure to be here. So thank you for inviting me. A little about me. I'm the Senior Vice President at Shepherds of Good Hope. I'm not really big on titles, blah, 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 blah. I started at Shepherds a very long time ago. I was privileged to volunteer there when I was 19 or 20 years old, doing my undergrad degree. Started at Shepherds the day after I graduated, and it's been 21 great years. But I have a really unique perspective on things because I've done everything in my organization, from volunteering to frontline social work, to managing supportive housing programs, to managing shelter-based programs, to senior management work and executive leadership work. So I have a pretty good spectrum on everything that we've been going through. And I found Fran's presentation to be really powerful because everything she was talking about is exactly what we're going through too. So you're going to see a lot of parallels actually between the two presentations. I'm going to do my best to fly through this. Like all of the other passionate speakers, I could probably be up here for 3 or 4 days, but I'm not going to take that much time. When I've been practicing this, it's usually about 30 to 35 minutes. And if there's any questions afterwards, happy to answer them. Or if we want to connect at the break or later on today, I'm here all day. Love talking about the work that we do. I'm going to do a really brief history of just who we are so you have a better understanding of our organization. The most important thing for us is not necessarily what we do, it's why we do it. So I'm going to spend our time on our why, because our why is really important. And then I'll also talk about what we do, and then I'm going to leave it on lessons learned. And I know for me, I've already had about 4 or 5 really key takeaways, lessons learned from listening to the other speakers. that I'm really excited about to bring back to Ottawa. So I'm hoping that I can maybe plant one apple seed in your heads in terms of some of the work we're doing in Ontario that you might want to consider either doing here or in your respective areas. So just briefly, our organization is 40 years old. Well, actually, it will be 40 this winter. It literally started in a church basement 40 years ago, and it was just a couple of volunteers that saw some people sleeping rough that were barred from all of the shelters in Ottawa, barred for behavioral issues or being under the influence of alcohol or mood-altering substances, so there was nowhere for them to go. So they were always sleeping rough. So they said, you know what? Come in, sleep on the floor, get up in the morning and go. And then they did that, and then there was one person, and then there was two, and then there was three. And then they thought, oh wow, okay, we need to do something a little bit different here. For our organization, it really changed. In 1987, we were actually gifted a building a couple blocks away, and we were able to really increase our programming. So instead of just having one or two people, it was about 30 or 40 people. That's when we created our soup kitchen and a low barrier drop-in program, which was really important in terms of it was a safe place for people to go regardless of their situation in terms of if they were under the influence, if they were barred from other shelters, they still had a safe place where they could go and hang out in community. In 1999, we actually bought this building, which is directly across the road. This is taking place in downtown Ottawa, and we were able to increase our shelter programs from about 30 or 40 to 268. So we run a very large shelter. We run the largest shelter in Ottawa. I'll explain that more when we get into the what we do. In 2001, we started what we call the Managed Alcohol Program. And I really love listening to Fran talk about their programs with regards to managed alcohol. We were the first in Canada to start what we would call a supportive living managed alcohol program. Seton House in Toronto had started something in 96 or 97 where it was like a drop-in where people could come in for a couple of hours, but if they left, they had to leave and start over the next day. So we've actually, I think we would consider ourselves subject matter experts on this now. We've been doing it for over 20 years. We have managed alcohol in our shelter. We have 2 managed alcohol supportive housing facilities. We've had many municipalities shadow us over the last 20 years, and we're currently working with 3 countries in Europe. So I'm excited to say that managed alcohol is happening in a lot of places now. 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. I'm still a big believer that every single major city in Canada should have a managed alcohol program. In 2013, we started a program called Transitional Emergency Shelter Programs, Target Engagement Diversion. I find we all love acronyms in this field. We call it TED. And when Fran was talking about that importance of that detox program, that's what this is for us. This is in our shelter. If you were to drive by, you would see police officers, police cruisers, ambulances around our building every day. And you would say, what the hell is going on in that building all the time? But what people don't realize is that it is a diversion program. So what happens is, if somebody is experiencing homeless, or if they're struggling with addiction, instead of being taken to the hospital or taken to police cells, they're brought to us. And we have a medical team in our facility. We have social workers in our facility where we can observe them, build trust with them, not judge them. So it works for us from a social work perspective, and it also works from the city's perspective because we're saving many hours with paramedics and police officers, also saving millions of dollars as well, same as Fran's story. So for us, this is a really innovative program. We're still the only ones really doing it to this scale in Canada. London, Ontario is looking at doing it as well. But for us, this was really the game changer. It's that one program that meets people where they're at, where we build trust with them, and then we transition them on to that next phase. In 2017, we realized we were doing such a good job with managed alcohol, but we needed to work on other forms of harm reduction. And that's when we started our supervised consumption and treatment services. We didn't have the land, but we knew we needed to do something. So we literally just took our parking lot and we put a trailer on it. It was really unpopular with the community, but we knew we had to do something because the toxic drug supply and the opiate crisis was out of control. We had individuals that were experiencing addiction dying on a almost daily, if not weekly basis. And we just knew we had to do something. So we bought a trailer, we started it. Originally, we started it, I think it was 12 hours a day. Then we were talking to our service users, and they said, you know, you're running this from like 9 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock in the evening. I know it's really convenient. That's when people want to work, but we really need it in the evening and the overnight. And that's when we said, okay, we got to do it. And then we were the first 24/7 supervised consumption site in Ottawa at the time. In 2020, we finally built a supervised consumption site on the main floor in this building beside our TED program. But our service users still demanded that we called it the trailer, so that's stuck. But we don't have the trailer anymore. I was really glad when we decommissioned that. So this is our why, and this is really important to me. And I think this first line says it all. We meet individuals where they are because that's where we're needed. That's what we do. You know, I think a lot of the time we can almost think we're experts in terms of all the innovative programs that we're doing, and we don't slow down and really look at what do the individuals need. So for us, this is really grounded in our why. We offer a full spectrum of care, from innovative community services to emergency transitional shelter programs and multiple supportive housing facilities. We develop pragmatic, innovative solutions that help those we serve renew their sense of worth, dignity, and community. So with our vision, homes for all, community for all, and hope for all. This is really important as well. I showed you that first slide in 1983, basement of the church. When we were founded 40 years ago, we were a religious organization. About 10 years ago, we decided to not be affiliated with any form of religion. We wanted to open up our tent and be available and be open to everyone. And our vision at the time was 76 words. And we challenged our organization to come up with something that was less than 15 words. And it took us like 3 days of intense debating to do it. I like to just do it, but apparently that's been trademarked elsewhere. So this is what we landed with. And that our mission is we foster hope and reduce harm in Ottawa by supporting the homeless and the most vulnerable with specialized services, programs, and partnerships. And I'm going to touch on that more in our lessons learned. I wanted to put our strategic plan on here quickly too, because this really what governs all of our decisions and all of our thought processes. And our first one is enhance the staff, client, and volunteer experience. So we have, when I started in 2001, I think we had 30 staff and maybe 40 volunteers. We now have almost 350 employees, and we have over 500 volunteers with 8 facilities across the city of Ottawa. And it really starts with enhancing all of these experiences. We've been focusing a lot on the client experience, and rightly so, but one of the things that we're also really talking about right now is enhancing the staff experience. And I think it's important to acknowledge that everybody in this room does really good work, and it's been a really hard couple of years. And we're the last ones to really pat ourselves on the back and say, good job. And there's a lot of trauma and a lot of stress, and a lot of people are leaving the industry in droves. And I just wanted to acknowledge all the great work that all of you are doing in this room. The second one for us is sustaining capacity, resiliency, and excellence in our work. And like Fran said, we really looked at our capacity as an organization. We wanted to do everything for everyone, but then we just realized we were spreading ourselves too thin and we were burning out. So what we did is we kind of looked at all of our programs and we said, what are our heartbeat programs? What is really aligned with our why? And we kept those. And the ones that weren't, we wound them down with dignity so that we had the capacity to put 100% effort into the programs that we needed to do. The third pillar, which is an important one but that we don't talk about enough, is long-term sustainability. So that's fiscal sustainability, but that's also environment or climate sustainability. And both are really important to us. Even though we're a not-for-profit, we still believe that we have a responsibility to planet Earth. And when we're planning our strategic plan and our annual plans, we take that into account. We've challenged ourselves to have our fleet of vehicles, we have 14 vehicles, to be completely electric by 2030. We're already halfway there in 2 years. And next year, we're going to be putting solar paneling on our 3 largest buildings. So we're really happy about that. I'm not going to go into the what we do in great detail, but what I will say is in our shelter programs, we have 3 floors, 3 different type of programs. We run a very large men's shelter, 110 beds. It's at 100% occupancy every day. And then our other 2 programs are what we call the TED TESP programs. One is for women, one is for men, and then we also work with gender diverse individuals that can go on either floor depending. So when I was talking about the target engagement diversion, this is that program that really brings in people. So our clientele are individuals that are not welcome anywhere else in Ottawa. They've been barred, they can't go, they have nowhere else to go. That is our entire population. So we journey with them, we build trust, we build community, and when they're ready to talk about it, we talk about it, and then we talk about that transition. In terms of our community services, I already mentioned the supervised consumption. I didn't mention needle exchange, but we've actually been doing that for over 20 years. I don't even want to call it needle exchange because they don't have to exchange. We give out all clean supplies. If they want to drop off, they can. We encourage it. But if they don't, we would still give it to them. The 2 areas that we're really jumping into now are managed opiate programs and safe supply programs. Those are also a really big game changer for us. We don't have enough funding to really expand it, so that's something we're really working on. I was going to mention this in the next panel, but I don't know if we'll have time, so I'll mention it now quickly. But one of our gaps, our biggest gap right now, is smoking inhalation, so safe inhalation. There's nowhere for those individuals in Ottawa to smoke. So we're trying to create a harm reduction program for those individuals as well, and we're working on getting a license from the government as we speak. The low barrier drop-in, I think, is critical too. Every city needs a low barrier drop-in, a safe place where people can go during the day. When we're looking at individuals in Ottawa that are experiencing homeless, they leave the shelter at 8 o'clock in the morning, they try to go to the library, they get kicked out, they try to go to the mall, they get kicked out, there's nowhere for to go. So we run a low barrier drop-in from 7 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. That doesn't judge and gives them a safe place to build community. I think the thing that we're the most proud about is when we're talking about our spectrum of care, the transitioning from shelter-based programs to supportive housing. So I'll just kind of quickly go over this. The reason I mention this is you'll see on the right, it's kind of got these kind of locations, and then the other side is kind of more of a specialty or acuity. So We have multiple supportive housing buildings across the city, but we've actually strategically spread them out across the city because we recognize our residents might have preferences on where they want to live, and we want to give them that choice. And then in terms of our supportive housing, we have specialized supportive housings. So some of them are managed alcohol, some of them are just plus 55 communities, and some of them are low acuity, and I think that's important when you're talking about that spectrum. We have individuals that maybe have been in our supportive housing for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and they say, I don't think I need all of these supports, but I still need some supports. So they can transition to what we call low acuity, where there's less staff and they can live more independently. Fran was also mentioning the rapid housing initiatives. We were fortunate to receive 2 of those. We've already finished one. It was a really small addition. We're building a monster of a program right now on Murray Street. It's been so challenging with the pandemic. We did our initial budget at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was 15 million, and then within 9 months, just from all the cost escalations of the pandemic, it was up into the low 30s. And then we were just scratching our heads being like, how are we gonna do this? But we've been innovative and we've been working with someone, and right now we're lucky enough that we have a plan. But the rapid housing initiatives have been great, but we've been prepared for them when they come out, and I'm actually gonna talk about that in the lessons learned. So this was just kind of a quick visual at some of our buildings, but right after this, I thought showing a quick 2-minute video was powerful in terms of one of our residents who's been living with us now for a little over 15 years, and this talks about giving them choice and understanding that housing just isn't a checkbox, that you have to look at every person individually. Her name is Corinne. She came into our doors around 2005, 2006, and she still lives with us today.
That was the beginning of my journey here at the Shepherds. The Shepherds is the greatest gift I've ever been given. The greatest gift. Oh yeah. No, don't make me cry. No, it is. It is. It really is. I established my family back because they had cut me out of my life during my episodes of drinking before I got here. I could go on and on for the people that have saved and helped me and got me to where I am possible to be here and to remain sober. All the staff and all the wonderful people and friends I've met here, that mean the world to me. It's a really great place. It really is. There should be more places like this. There should.
I could probably do an entire presentation just on the importance of managed alcohol programs. There really should be more places like that. So if you're going back to your area and you don't have one yet, then I think that's really something that you should be working on. In terms of lessons learned, I really wasn't sure the overall audience. So this is also from a perspective of all of the frontline staff in this room, to acknowledge that, but then if there's also senior and executive leaderships too, because there's a lot of lessons learned from our perspective. The first one's a bit kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I think it's probably the most important, and that's to enhance the client experience, you have to consult the clients. And I think a lot of the times that's the critical piece that we miss doing. And I can fully acknowledge for us during the pandemic, we've been in survival mode for the last 2 years in our shelters and supportive housing. We've been missing this piece. And we sit here and we talk about innovation, and we talk about harm reduction, and we talk about where we're going. They're the experts. So we always have to make sure that we're doing regular consultations and we're building our programming around what they need. The second one, and this was mentioned earlier in the day, but partnerships are mission critical. So as a not-for-profit, we do not have anywhere near enough sustainable funding to run really dynamic supportive housing with 24-hour health supports. So then what do? We partner with other dynamic organizations. So we work with someone in Ottawa called Ottawa Inner City Health. They managed all of our health supports. So we're able to bring funding to the table to run the buildings, and then they bring funding to the table for the health supports. And when you put both organizations together, it's magic. So when you're thinking about doing innovation, don't think about doing it alone. Find another dynamic organization and integrate. The third one is that harm reduction is an evidence-based, client-centered approach that works. I think that one's just pretty self-explanatory. You know, I always say abstinence-based is great when it works, but we really believe that it's important not to leave anyone behind. Harm reduction allows that, and it's really important for us. This is an important one for the senior leaderships in the room. If you want to build, start 2 to 3 years before you think you should. And what I mean by that is, for those that have been experiencing the Rapid Housing Initiative RFPs that come out, you get really excited and you say, wow, here's $20 million, we can move the needle. Oh, we just have to figure out our entire plan in 120 days, and that includes buying land and who's gonna build it, and then you run out of time. So this happened to us a lot around 2015, 2016, and we said, no, the next time these things come out, we want to be ready. We want to put our hand up and say, shovel-ready project over here. So what we started doing around 2018 is we worked with our own foundation. We were fortunate to save up some funds, and we actually bought 2 parcels of land, which is not an easy feat. There's not much land available. It takes a year or 2 to actually really do this properly. So we bought the land, and then we actually hired our architect and our sub-consultants and actually put a plan together so that when these RHI proposals came out and all of our partnering agencies were saying, wow, we would love to do this, but we're just too busy and we don't have the time, we were that kid sitting at the front of the class like this saying, we have shovel-ready projects ready to go. And that allowed us to actually get enough funding to build 2 buildings, and that's really moving the needle in our city. So just something to think about. And the last one, which I already touched on, was just the fiscal sustainability sets you up for success. And then as not-for-profits, usually that's the one thing we don't think about. It's like, no, we're here for our clients, our residents, we'll figure that part out. But what we realized was that if you don't have sustainable operating funds, you can't be as dynamic as you need to be. So we really pushed our government to give us what we call fixed funding, because before that we were receiving variable funding, depending on how many people were staying with us. So every month we would be looking at our numbers being like, oh, we might have to close a program or let some people go or not do programming. And then we didn't want to operate like that. So we really worked hard on our fiscal sustainability. So now we can comfortably say the programs that we're currently running, we have confidence that we can keep them going. So that's really important as well. And I think that's it. Thank you.